A terrified 6-year-old boy stood on stage getting pelted with tomatoes while butchering a Frank Sinatra song until suddenly the most famous voice in America began singing from the shadows of the pump room. What happened next turned a room full of cruel strangers into witnesses of one of the most beautiful acts of humanity ever caught on tape. But here's what nobody talks about. What did Frank Sinatra whisper to that little boy backstage that changed his life forever? The Ambassador East Hotel's pump room buzzes with the electric energy of Chicago's elite on a bitter February night in 1962. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over red velvet banquettes where politicians, mobsters, and socialites share the same air, their conversations mixing with the clink of martini glasses and the soft shuffle of cards from the backroom poker game. Cigarette smoke curls lazily toward the coffered ceiling as waiters in crisp white jackets glide between tables, balancing trays of prime rib and champagne. The room pulses with the kind of dangerous sophistication that only emerges when power, money, and influence converge in dimly lit spaces. At corner tables, men in expensive suits lean close over handshakes that seal deals worth more than most people see in a lifetime. Their wives, draped in mink and diamonds, sip champagne and trade gossip that could topple careers or launch empires. The air itself seems thick with secrets, ambition, and the intoxicating scent of possibility. At table 7, a nervous man in a rumpled suit checks his watch for the 4th time in 5 minutes. Tony Castellano owns 3 nightclubs on the South Side, but tonight he's sweating like a rookie facing his first mob collection. His star singer called in sick, with what sounded suspiciously like a hangover. His backup act just got arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct outside the Palmer House, and in exactly 18 minutes, he needs to present entertainment to a room full of people who don't accept excuses, apologies, or second chances. His salvation walks through the heavy oak doors in the form of a tiny 6-year-old boy clutching his mother's weathered hand like a lifeline. The child's miniature tuxedo hangs comically oversized on his small frame, the jacket sleeves extending well past his tiny hands, the bow tie nearly as wide as his narrow shoulders. His hair is slicked back with too much pomade, giving him the appearance of a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes. "You absolutely sure about this, Mrs. Murphy?" Tony asks, studying the boy's pale face and quivering hands that barely peek out from his sleeves. "These people, they're not exactly what you'd call forgiving. They paid good money for their evening's entertainment, and they expect quality." The boy's mother smooths his hair with a shaking hand, her Irish accent thickening with worry and desperation. "Danny's been singing since he could barely talk, Mr. Castellano. He knows every Frank Sinatra song by heart, every note, every breath. He practices for hours every day in our apartment until the neighbors complain." Her voice carries the weight of unpaid bills and empty cupboards, the kind of desperation that makes impossible decisions seem reasonable. In the corner booth shrouded in shadow, Frank Sinatra nurses his 3rd Jack Daniels and tries to disappear into the darkness. He'd slipped in through the kitchen entrance 30 minutes ago, desperate to escape the circus of his own life, to find some quiet corner of the world where Frank Sinatra the man could exist without Frank Sinatra, the legend breathing down his neck with endless demands and expectations. Frank Sinatra stares into his whiskey glass and sees the reflection of a man running on fumes and borrowed time. 3 months of sold-out shows across the country have left him hollow and exhausted, performing the nightly ritual of being Frank Sinatra, while the real Frank withers somewhere deep inside, like a plant kept too long from sunlight. His divorce from Ava Gardner still bleeds like an open wound that refuses to heal, the tabloids dissecting every intimate detail of their spectacular collapse with surgical precision and sadistic glee. The headlines follow him everywhere like hungry wolves, turning his private pain into public entertainment for millions of strangers who consume his heartbreak with their morning coffee. Sinatra's love life in shambles. Ava tells all about Frank's violent temper. The chairman of the board's empire crumbling. Each story wounds deeper than the last, stripping away another layer of the man beneath the legend until he barely recognizes himself in the mirror. His hands bear the physical evidence of his internal war, knuckles still tender and slightly swollen from last week's incident with an overeager photographer who got too close, asked too many personal questions. push too hard for that $1 million shot of Frank Sinatra's raw vulnerability. The studio executives want him smiling and singing like a trained seal. The mob connections want him available and grateful for their continued protection. And the fans want him to be everything to everyone, while revealing nothing real about himself. He came to Chicago to escape all of it, to find some quiet corner of the world where he could drink in peace and remember what it felt like to be human instead of a commodity. His security detail waits outside in the bitter February cold, giving him this rare moment of blessed anonymity where he can simply exist without performing. On stage, Danny Murphy struggles through the second verse of Fly Me to the Moon, his tiny voice high and sweet but cracking with nerves, the sophisticated lyrics far beyond his understanding, but singing with the earnest determination that only comes from a small child desperately trying to please adults. The audience grows restless, their expensive patience wearing thin like ice on a warming pond. A dinner roll arcs through the air with deliberate cruelty, missing Danny by inches and landing with a soft thud against the piano bench. Sinatra watches Danny's mother press her hand to her mouth, her face pale with horror and complete helplessness. He recognizes that look with painful clarity, the desperate calculation of someone who needs the money too badly to pull their child to safety, even as they watch them being destroyed. It's the same expression his own mother wore during those lean Hoboken winters when young Frankie sang on street corners for nickels and dimes, his breath visible in the cold air as he crooned for coins that meant the difference between dinner and hunger. A cherry tomato flies through the air with vicious accuracy, catching Danny square in the chest and leaving a red stain on his white shirt appearing as a wound, as blood, as shame made visible. The laughter dies in Frank's throat as he watches Danny stand frozen on stage, his tiny frame trembling as if caught in a hurricane. Danny Murphy's mouth opens and closes silently, no sound emerging except the soft whimpers of a small child trying not to cry in front of strangers. The crowd's cruelty reaches a fever pitch as someone hurls another tomato, this one splattering against the backdrop behind Danny's head. Sinatra rises from his booth, the movement slow and deliberate, moving with predatory grace through the shadows. The whiskey burns in his veins, but his mind clears with crystalline focus. He's watched enough. He's been silent long enough. The child stumbles backward toward the edge of the small stage, clearly ready to flee, when Frank's voice pierces through the chaos like a blade through silk. In other words, hold my hand. The unmistakable baritone fills every corner of the room, each note perfectly pitched and weighted with 40 years of experience. The effect is instantaneous and electric. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Glasses freeze halfway to lips. Heads swivel desperately, searching for the source of that legendary voice that everyone in America knows, but no one expected to hear in this intimate space. Sinatra steps from the shadows, his presence transforming the room's energy with the electric intensity of an approaching storm. He's not performing now. He's claiming territory, asserting dominance through sheer vocal authority. The young performer stares in disbelief, his tears catching the stage lights as Sinatra continues the song exactly where Danny's voice had failed. In other words, darling, kiss me. The legend moves through the crowd, which parts before him as if by divine command. Some patrons fumble for cameras, others simply gape in stunned recognition. The man who threw the tomato slides lower in his chair, suddenly fascinated by his dinner plate. His eyes never leave Danny as he approaches the stage, his voice carrying the weight of every heartbreak, every triumph, every moment that forged him into who he became. The pianist, recognizing the moment's significance, adjusts his playing to match Frank's interpretation, adding subtle flourishes that transform the familiar song into something deeper, more urgent. He reaches the stage's edge and extends his hand toward Danny, his voice never wavering, the invitation clear and unmistakable. The child hesitates, overwhelmed by the impossibility of the moment. "Come on, kid," Sinatra declares between verses, his speaking voice barely audible, but somehow reaching every ear in the now silent room. "Let's show them how it's done." Danny's hand shakes as he reaches toward Frank's outstretched fingers. The contact is electric, a passing of some indefinable torch from master to student, from survivor to survivor. Frank's grip is firm and warm, anchoring Danny to something solid in a world that had just been trying to destroy him. As Frank helps Danny down from the platform, the room holds its collective breath. This isn't a publicity stunt or a calculated career move. This is Frank Sinatra, the man, not the legend, stepping into the arena to protect someone who can't protect himself. The silence stretches taut as he prepares to transform this moment of cruelty into an experience that will live in memory long after the last note fades. The legend guides Danny to center spotlight, his arm around Danny's shoulders, serving as protection against the world's cruelty. The room remains frozen in stunned silence, as if everyone understands they're witnessing something unrepeatable and sacred. He looks out at the sea of faces, some embarrassed, others curious, all completely captivated by the unexpected turn their evening has taken. "You know," Sinatra states, his voice conversational, but carrying to every corner of the room, "I was just a little older than you when I first got up in front of people who didn't want to hear me sing." His words land with quiet authority, no trace of the polished showman, just a man sharing truth. Scared out of my mind, voice trembling uncontrollably. And you know what happened? They booed me off the stage. Danny looks up at him with wide eyes, finding courage in Frank's steady presence. He adjusts the microphone to the boy's height, his movements gentle and deliberate, transforming the stage from a place of humiliation into sanctuary. "But here's what I learned that night," he continues, his gaze sweeping the room, making eye contact with the very people who had been throwing food moments earlier. "It takes more guts to get up here and risk everything than it does to sit in the dark and throw tomatoes. This kid's got more courage in his little finger than most of us show in a lifetime." He nods to the pianist, who begins a soft introduction to High Hopes. But Frank doesn't sing alone. Instead, he leans close to Danny and whispers something that makes Danny's face transform from terror to wonder. Together, they begin the song, Frank's seasoned voice supporting and lifting Danny's trembling one, creating a harmony that seems to heal the very air around them. As they sing, magic unfolds in the room. The hostility evaporates, replaced by something deeper and more human. People lean forward in their chairs, drawn into this unexpected moment of grace. Some wipe their eyes. Others simply stare in amazement at witnessing Frank Sinatra at his most generous and unguarded. When the song ends, the applause is thunderous but respectful, born not from politeness but from genuine emotion. Frank shakes Danny's hand formally, man to man, then pulls a $20 bill from his wallet and presses it into Danny's palm. "For your troubles, kid," he says with a wink. "And remember, they can throw all the tomatoes they want, but they can't throw away your dreams." As Frank escorts Danny off the stage, Danny's mother rushes forward, tears streaming down her face. She tries to thank Frank, but he waves away her words, his attention focused entirely on Danny. "You keep singing, understand?" Frank tells him quietly, away from the crowd's ears. "Don't let anyone tell you you're not good enough. I've got a feeling we're going to hear great things from Danny Murphy someday." 30 years later, Grammy-winning jazz vocalist Danny Murphy would tell this story to packed concert halls, always ending with the same words. "Frank Sinatra taught me that the difference between a dream and reality isn't talent or luck. It's the courage to keep singing when the whole world wants you to stop."